Welcome to presentation number 9 in our series Rereading Revelation. This is a rereading again, even though we did one a year ago. So we're in the process of rereading. We practice what we preach. And we are in chapter 5 in the book of Revelation, Crisis in the Heavenly Council. That's the title, and let's just look at where we are. We are in the sequence dealing with the 7 seals of Revelation, the book sealed with 7 seals. It starts here in chapter 4 with the open heaven. It continues here in chapter 5 with a crisis in the heavenly council. It continues in chapter 6 with the breaking of the first 6 seals. And then there is a digression or a time out in chapter 7. We will look at what to call it and find a better term for it in chapter 7. And then in the first verse of chapter 8, then the 7th seal is opened. So here is what we are doing today. The crisis in the heavenly council. And let's just say, let me give my own personal opinion here. I think chapter 5 in Revelation is the most important chapter. I think what comes to light, what comes to view there, decides so many other things. So one cannot do this too carefully, too well. It is really the critical point in the whole story in many ways. Just to look at the illustration again, there is a seal, a scroll that is sealed, and we are curious what we are going to get into here. So I said in relation to chapter 4, the open heaven, that it isn't as simple as going from a troubled, chaotic earth to a peaceful, calm, heaven. It isn't as simple as that. And sure enough, here you have the confirmation. When we start reading in chapter 5, if you thought that I was exaggerating in chapter 4, I think you can see that it is that I really wasn't. So here, problem in heaven, sealed scroll. Then I saw in the right hand of the one seated on the throne a scroll written on the inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who has what it takes to open the scroll and break its seals?" And you thought my voice was loud there, but you haven't heard the voice of the angel and what the loud voice is when the angels speak. So, booming voice, that's what we need to hear here. And here is William Blake's illustration. This is a classic illustration of the Ancient of Days, surrounded by the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders and a rainbow here and that troubling book, a scroll sealed with 7 seals, and all heaven calling attention to that scroll. That's what we're seeing. Sealed scroll and the heavenly council. And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or look into it. It is as though they appointed a search committee and said, we need to find someone who can open the scroll. And they looked for candidates and there wasn't anyone. They looked in heaven, nobody there. On earth, nobody there. Well, let's go down to the netherworld and see if there is someone there. You simply don't find someone who can do it. It is difficult to do it. It takes a certain set of qualifications, and here is our scroll sealed with 7 seals. And this is the Trinity Apocalypse. I wonder if that is the one I like the best. It is one of the oldest ones from late medieval times. So here is the seated on the throne. There is the scroll sealed with 7 seals, and here surrounded by the 24 elders and by the 4 living creatures, and all attention is on that scroll. So, and I wept and wept profusely, because no one was found to have what it takes to open the scroll and to look into it. What is it we have? We went from earth to heaven. We have so many problems on earth. We want to turn to heaven to see if they can solve our problems. And we turn to heaven, and lo and behold, heaven has problems too. It didn't help much. Heaven is also in a state of, in some ways, disarray or not knowing quite what to do. I wept and wept. And here in the Deus Apocalypse, there is John, and he is weeping. And the angel has called attention to the scroll sealed with 7 seals, and we just don't have anyone who can open it, who can disclose it or diffuse the crisis. So Adela Yarbrough Collins, she is now retired, but she is one member of a power couple in biblical studies. Her husband is John Collins, who is one of the world's foremost experts on what is called apocalyptic literature. And Adela Collins, she has written several books on Revelation and a massive commentary on the Gospel of Mark. She was a professor at Yale University until her retirement. And her perception of what is going on here, I have the title Crisis in Heaven, or Crisis in the Heavenly Council. Her perception here, I think, is unsurpassed. It is really, really good. The first 4 verses of chapter 5 imply that the heavenly council is faced with a serious problem. Is that in the text? It surely is in the text. The calling attention to this scroll. It is sealed, it is inaccessible, and no one can open it. We have a problem on our hands. So she says it really well. And then here is the council's idea, just to make a certain analogy of a deliberating body. The heavenly council as a deliberating body where they discuss things and have opinions about things and participate in the management of the world, as it were. So, reading on from Adela Yarbrough Collins, a very simple book. She wrote several scholarly books, but this was written in a non-scholarly book published quite a few years ago. In the context of the apocalypse as a whole, it is clear that the problem facing the heavenly council is the rebellion of Satan, which is paralleled by rebellion on earth. Chapter 5 presupposes the old story of Satan's rebellion against God, which leads to the fall of creation. How does she know that? How does she know that? Which of the methods we have outlined for reading Revelation helps us the most when we hear her say that? To become a rereader. If you are a rereader, that is to say, if you have been through it once or twice or 3 times, you have a perception, you have an awareness of the whole, and you know that the story of the rebellion of Satan will be told in the book of Revelation. Most explicitly laid out in chapter 12 at the center of the book. But what she is saying as a good rereader of Revelation is that the influence of the story of the rebellion, of the cosmic conflict, the influence of that story is felt here at the beginning of the book in chapter 5. We are in chapter 5 now, in the chapter about the crisis in the heavenly council. So the text says that there was a big problem, and the rereader, a good expert rereader, is helping us to pursue or to think about it in relation to the theme of cosmic conflict that is at the center of the book. So again, we have talked about this earlier in how to read Revelation, but it should be said again that the theme of cosmic conflict is the hub of the wheel, that various scenarios, these 7 seals or 7 letters, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, all of these that are laid out sequentially in the book, that's fine that they are laid out sequentially in the book. There is no other way to do it in a kind of narrative. But they relate to the theme of cosmic conflict immediately, not just in a linear sense. You look at the trumpets, think of the cosmic conflict. Look at the seals, as Adela Collins says, think of the cosmic conflict. That's what we are looking at here. Who has what it takes? Who has what it takes to open the scroll? That concept, the word in Greek is axios. So the sense or the image that should come to mind about having what it takes is a scale, a pair of scales with 2 arms, and something weighs down the scale at one end. Who has the weight, or who can bring the scale into balance? Who can balance the scales? So there is a sense of awareness of the problem. There is a kind of weight on the scale that we need to counter, or that we need to solve or to balance. Let's read on. And one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has won the war, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals." And here there is an Old Testament background text in Isaiah, in chapter 11, in Isaiah, in verses 1 to 10, that I plan to look at in more detail in the context of these 7 seals. But the term, the Root of David, is taken from that text in Isaiah. My translation is very pointed. I don't just say that he has won. The text, strictly speaking, says only he has won. So what did he win? He won the war, the cosmic conflict. He prevailed in the cosmic conflict. So you see Adela Collins thinking that the problem in the heavenly council is related to the cosmic conflict is correct. So here someone has won and has planted his flag and is triumphant. But of course this representation is misleading, because it doesn't show us quite how he won the war. Here it looks like the winner, that the victor, it looks like he has kind of killed everyone here. But the winner in the book of Revelation isn't just someone who kills others, as we will see. So let's look at the detail here, a little more detailed picture from the Trinity Apocalypse. So here is the Lion of the tribe of Judah that has come into the picture, and he has what it takes to open the scroll. And I saw in the middle of the throne, and in the middle of the 4 living creatures, And in the middle of the 24 elders, a lamb standing, as though it had been killed with violence, having 7 horns and 7 eyes. So this is the strange thing, because who is the winner in this war? Who is killing whom here? This is the bad side, killing the good side. The lamb that was killed with violence is not the figure in red. The lamb that has been killed with violence is the figure in white. And he wins the war, despite the fact that he seems to be losing it, that he seems to be the victim, the one who is killed with violence. That's what is so counterintuitive in this story, and so strange. So in our representations here, this is Albrecht Dürer's, a detail from Albert Dürer's a representation where he shows the lamb here coming to open the scroll, and everyone, all the heavenly council here looking at it admiringly. And this is the scene that captures everyone's attention. And we have a similar one here from an even older picture. There is the scroll, it has been opened, and it is the lamb with the 7 horns and 7 eyes that was able to do it. And there is a big acclamation around it here. And here in the most famous, or one of the most famous depictions of Dürer, here we see the solution. The lamb that has been killed with violence is now alone at center stage and is the one who has solved the problem. So we read on. He went, and he has taken. There's a strange mix of Greek, of the tenses of the verb here. He went, it's a past tense. He has taken, that's in perfect tense. He went, and he has taken, and is now in possession of the scroll and in control of it, has taken the scroll from the right hand of the one who is seated on the throne, and here he is, and he is able to disclose whatever is in that scroll. And again here, this detail from the Trinity Apocalypse. See the wound here? See, there is the lamb, has a wound here. And here you see that the lamb is violent. The wound is inflicted violently, as though by a spear here. I really think that those who have made these illustrations have done it with great reverence, with great respect for the subject matter, and invested tremendous work in detailed work in getting this right. So let's read on. When he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. They sing a new song. You have what it takes to take the scroll and to open its seals. For you were killed with violence. That explanation, what quality in the lamb or in this figure, what is it that is so crucial, that is such a key element in making him able to do it? You were killed with violence. And again, we have this notion that there is an opponent here, there is a conflict, there is a fierce contest going on. And where is our lamb? It is the victim who is here, the winner. That is very counterintuitive, isn't it? We read on. Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels surrounding the throne and the living creatures and the elders. They numbered myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands. You see now a growing audience here. 4 living creatures, 24 elders, and now thousands and thousands joining in, talking here or singing. the lamb that was killed with violence has what it takes to deserve the power and the riches and praise. So we're almost done in chapter 5, and you see this wave of acclamation playing out here. Let's see if we can find it here in the picture. Here is that one depiction by Albrecht Dürer in the 15th century. And this is the one he's done in color. Here they are with the palm branches, and there are many of them, and there is just jubilation at what the lamb that was killed with violence has accomplished. So, before he opens the scroll, let's look at where we are. In terms of method, in terms of the approach to the book of Revelation, we have seen the necessity of being a rereader. That was already, or we were reminded of that again now by showing that the crisis in the heavenly council is related to the war that began in heaven, the cosmic conflict. We have also said that we need to go back to the Old Testament and see how John uses the Old Testament. And we have said that God is not the only one who is at work in the world. There is a conflict here. There are two sides. And then, as to content here so far, we have moved from the ashes of earthly chaos to the fire of heavenly conflict, of a heavenly crisis. And not, as many have thought, from earthly chaos to heavenly calm. That is still a strange thing. And my question here, what awaits? What is ahead in the book sealed with 7 seals? That is what we will talk about in detail next time. But here, sort of breaking it down to a more comprehensible, deliberating body, everyone here sitting with a question mark and wondering about these questions, as are we wondering about it too. So there are 2 specifics, and now we move to this. The first method was become a rereader. Second one, what was that? Look at the allusions to the Old Testament. See what the Old Testament can do to help us here. So the scroll in Revelation is sealed with 7 seals. It is a scroll written on the inside and on the back and sealed with 7 seals. That's how it is described at the very beginning of this chapter. Is there anything in the Old Testament that can help us here? And there is in the book of Ezekiel a text, and Ezekiel this is kind of Ezekiel territory, because the scene in the heavenly council is very similar to a scene at the beginning of the book of Ezekiel. So let's look at what happens here. This is Ezekiel talking. I looked, and a hand was stretched out to me, and a written scroll was in it. He spread it before me. It had writing on the front and on the back, and written on it were words of lamentation and mourning and woe. So this is the best candidate text in the Old Testament for the scroll that is here, sealed with 7 seals. But the content of this scroll is known. So that is a curious feature, because it seems that a scroll that is sealed with 7 seals must be that no one knows what is in it. But the allusion to the Old Testament text in Ezekiel, a scroll similar to the one we have in Revelation, the content of which is known. So let's look. This is then just thinking about it, pondering this. The content of the Old Testament scroll is known. Lamentation, mourning, and woe. Bad things, not good things. Is the content of Revelation scroll also known? Could you have a scroll that is sealed in a sense, not because sealed, not as though all the content is unknown. It just is mysterious. It is not understood, perhaps. So here is the parallels here. You have the scroll in Revelation, you have the scroll in Ezekiel, and you have the written here on the front and on the back. Same here, written on the front and on the back. And here, we know what is in it. My question is, do we know what is in this scroll too? But we don't understand it. It is understanding that is lacking. To unseal the scroll is to come into a sort of understanding. Does that fit? Is there anything in the Bible to that effect? So I am still hanging on to this idea that Ezekiel is the text that illuminates the text in Revelation. And then let's look, and I think we are leaning in this direction, that there is known content, but content that isn't understood. I'm not saying that everything that is in the scroll is known. It's not necessary to say everything. It's just to say that this problem in the scroll, in a sort of qualitative sense, might actually be known. So here, in other biblical texts, here in the book of Isaiah, we have the notion of something that is sealed. The term is, it is sealed, but the problem is lack of understanding. So it is incomprehension that is the problem. And let's read the text. The vision of all this has been for you like the words of a sealed document. If it is given to those who can read, with the command, read this, they say, we cannot, for it is sealed. And if it is given to those who cannot read, saying, read this, they say, we cannot read. So, but the problem here is not inability to read per se. It's not inability to know what is in the book. It is incomprehension. That is the problem. So the sealed document is sealed in the sense that we don't understand it. That's what we are seeing here. Well, there is another text like it, sealed as lack of understanding, here as incomprehension. And this one is in the book of Daniel. He said, go your way, Daniel. And Daniel is a big voice in the book of Revelation. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are to remain secret and sealed until the time of the end. But the words are known. It is understanding that is lacking. Understanding will come later. Secret and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified, cleansed, and refined. None of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. So here, these are intriguing thoughts. So we have a book that is sealed, and we have an allusion to the Old Testament of a book similar to Revelation, the content of which is known. We have the concept of sealed scrolls in the Old Testament, where the problem is not ignorance of the content, it is lack of understanding. I am proposing that the sealed scroll in Revelation is of this kind, that has more explanatory power, and the crisis in the heavenly council and the call for someone who has what it takes is not simply a problem that will be solved by information. It has to be solved by perspective, by something brought to bear on the problem. That is what we're looking at. So I want to have three. I have three illustrations here of the meaning of revelation here. The first one on revelation. What is the concept? Not only something unknown, but something outside the range of ordinary thought. If you think of the sealed scroll mostly in the sense that this is a prediction of future events, then you could say, well, it takes something really special to know the future. And you could say that is, outside ordinary thought to know the future, in a sense. But it is more than that. It is something, a perspective, a way of doing things that lies outside of ordinary thought. That's what we are thinking here. And why is it that only the Lamb can do it? Why is it that he can only do it because he is the Lamb that was killed with violence? Those are things that lie outside ordinary thought. That's what I'm trying to say. Here is a second one. So here is a box, and we are waiting for an illumination by revelation. So the concept of revelation, not only something outside of thought, but something contrary to ordinary thought. Exactly what you didn't expect. What could not be your solution if you stood on your head. That's the concept of revelation. That's how radical it is. And knowledge of the future is too trivial. It's not big enough for the kind of concept or for the content of revelation, as it were. Let's look at our box. Let's open it. Let's see what happens. Revelation springs a surprise on us. That's because it is contrary to ordinary thought. And here is a third one, also on the meaning of revelation. I need to close that up again. And first, I guess it comes, I can't stop it. Anyway, here it is. Number 3. A revelation that is outside the realm of ordinary thought and contrary to ordinary thought is not only a revelation, but also an act of persuasion. Because if you couldn't think it, and if what is revealed to you is contrary to what you would have expected and thought was reasonable, then you can be brought around only if you're persuaded by what is revealed. So it is outside ordinary thought, contrary to ordinary thought, and it is an act of persuasion. And the heavenly council has been persuaded, because what they also had a problem like us. That's what we might see. So, options for unsealing. Is it information or understanding? I'm not going to say it's one or the other necessarily, but we are putting the accent somewhere here. Is the accent on information or is it on understanding? I lean this way. The content is sealed, not necessarily because, or the scroll is sealed, not necessarily in the sense of unknown content, but in the sense of deficient understanding. And when it is unsealed, yes, we have information, yes, we have knowledge, and then we are the problem is unsealed to us or unlocked for us when we reach the level of comprehension. That's what this revelation aspires to do for us. So again, scenarios for unsealing. You unlock the book and make it possible for us to read it. Yes, we say that is also there. It's there in a certain way. But the biggest one is to unlock the mind, to change the way we think about things, to unseal the mind. the problem, the solution happens inside here, in the way we think about these issues, and not simply on what we know about the world, as it were. So here are two contrasting scenarios of what is revealed in Revelation. A world is seen, it is human history. There is a revelation of what lies ahead, events, dates, chronology, various issues. So let us not say that that isn't there, but let us say that it is mostly a matter of perspective. The world seen, the heavenly council, the perspective on earthly reality that you get when you see above the clouds, as it were. That is the contrast. So this, okay, yes, and this even more yes to this one. That's what we are looking at. So again, then I magnified this one, looking above the clouds. I think this is like, is it called a periscope or something? And then the seeing that reality, the heavenly reality, and the mind being unlocked to help us see things in a different perspective. And this one, what is the main revelation? Is it what is in the book? Or is it the person who unravels it? Is it the person or the book? Is it the scroll or the person? That is what we're looking at. Look at this illustration, see what you think. Not the man who has the key, but the man who is the key. That's the focus. That is the big sort of centering of the revelation here. And I cannot stress that too much. To have what it takes, this is where to tilt the scale or balance the scale. The heavenly council is in a state of crisis over a scroll that no one can open. We have seen that. Finding someone who has what it takes is a statement cognizant of the task, some awareness of the content of the scroll. Here, the balancing of the scales here. What can he bring to bear on that reality? Allusions to the Old Testament indicate that the content of the scroll to some extent is known. Lamentations, mourning, and woe. That's what we saw in Ezekiel. To unseal such a scroll requires more than getting to know the content. It takes a new perspective on things. So again, in contrasting this, unlocking the mind, unlocking the book, and this at least as a complementary insight to what the usual way of thinking, where we think, oh, if I only knew what was in that book. You may know more about what is in that book than you thought. That's what we are saying here. And then the key. And this is the man as the key. That is the issue here. He's not just has a key, he is the key. The lamb killed with violence here in the cosmic war. I just want to review these texts and see how everything seems to focus on the fact that he was killed with violence and that we have a cosmic conflict. I saw a lamb standing as though it had been killed with violence. In 5:6, you have what it takes to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were killed with violence. 5:9. The lamb that was killed with violence has what it takes to deserve the power and riches and praise. 5:11 and 12. So there is the qualifications in some ways is related to what has happened to him as a victim of violence. So now we're taking stock and we are just primed to see what follows in chapter 6 when he breaks the seals. Here are some propositions in closing. What bothers the heavenly council, listen to this. I don't think you have heard it before, or it has not been presented this way usually. What bothers the heavenly council is the present they know, and not the future they don't know. Can I say that again? The big question mark here. What bothers the heavenly council is the present they know, human reality that they know, and not the future they don't know. What bothers the heavenly council is not the rebellion of Lucifer per se, that in itself, but God's response to the rebellion of Lucifer. They could have solved it some other way. You could have solved it by the Lamb doing something else. You could have won the war by some other means. And then God wins the war through the Lamb that is killed with violence. And that is the persuasive element here. What changes the hearts and minds of the heavenly council is the Lamb that was killed with violence, and not the content of the scroll. Those are tenets, those are ideas I wish to pursue as we move to the next topic in chapter 6. But here is my illustration of these points here. Why the Lamb that was killed with violence is the central revelation. And this is from Van Eyck's, this is called the Ghent altarpiece. And it is not the book that is at the center here. It is not the book that is at the center. It is the Lamb that was killed with violence.